All right, so there's one thing that you need to understand about Photoshop brushes, and that's that you only need one, which is the hard round. And, that obviously seems wrong. It's because it is wrong, but let me explain why this is an important thing to understand and what I really mean by this. You can change the color of any pixel with this brush, and that's all you need to create digital art, right? So what we're really getting when we choose like more complicated brushes is more nuanced ways of changing the colors of pixels, right? We're mainly controlling two things. We're controlling value and we're controlling shapes, right? So if we take this hard round brush and we change the opacity, right, then suddenly we've got more control over the value, right, the lightness or darkness of whatever pixel. So I can paint something like this, and then if I want to control shape, I go to the hard round eraser, right? And let's say I don't know, cut this out like that. And all of a sudden, I have a rock, right? I mean, obviously it's not a best rock ever, but, there you have it. It's a rock. And so, that's another level of control that we can add. We add another level of control. We've got size, right? And so that gives us control over shape, right, instead of value. So, you can, this is obviously more useful for like a more comic book style. Or you could use it to like hatch, or here's another thing that I did in one of the previous takes, where it's like you can basically create like silhouettes. So this is like a theoretical mech, right? So what I'm doing is I'm using this really simple brush, and basically it gives me nice control over all of the shapes, so I can create this silhouette really efficiently. And what a goofy silhouette it is too. It's basically a tank with legs. But anyway, the point is like that this gives us control over shape, right? You got to understand what dynamics of the brush give you control over what, because you need the brush to basically solve whatever problems you have in your piece for you, right? Like it's got to be the right tool for the job, in other words. Let's say we're creating, we want to sketch out, if we have the size and the opacity, we can have like a pencil-like thing, and this is, something a lot of artists use because it comes default with a lot of programs, is this like opacity and size jitter. And so a lot of, especially like DeviantArt artists, you'll see this brush in use a lot, even in like a painting sense, and it's okay for painting. But one thing that Photoshop has, and other programs have sort of variations on this, is the flow slider, right? And so this kind of controls the rate at which the paint comes out, versus what the opacity just controls the transparency. So it's a little bit subtle, but it is very different. And so if you can see, as I reduce the flow, it's still kind of like it's still got that opacity feel, but if I go in and I change the spacing, and upping the spacing just kind of has the effect of reducing the flow even further, because I'm spacing out the stamps, and then the flow is sort of spacing out the application of pigment, if you want to think about it that way. You get, like, this is almost a marker, right? And if you sort of mess with it at different rates, you can get something that's more of a watercolor. But I think I've explained the sort of functions well, so I'm going to give some examples. So this brush does a lot, right? So I can use it to sketch if I want. I don't usually use it to sketch, but its main feature is as like it's supposed to look like an oil paint. So if I'm rendering something out, let's see if I can find something that I've rendered. I'll probably just flash it up on the screen and zoom in on the sort of brushwork. Right, you can render something with interesting brushwork for this, but you can also use it to apply texture. So let's say like this is the bottom of like a dirty wall or something. I can sort of go in, and because of the brush shape and the sort of texture of it, I can, like add different things. And I don't know, I could even, it's hard enough when I press down that I could even just add like a door frame or something if I wanted to. Like there's a lot of stuff I can do with this brush. There's a lot of problems that it solves without being overly complicated, and that's why I like it as a brush. And a lot of these kind of hit that middle ground as well of simple but useful, So this one is just a textury brush. So, I mean, let's see. One of the things that concept artists do a lot is they like draw this outline first, and then they add some sort of texture. Like you'll see it in like some like Disney foliage and stuff, or concept art foliage that kind of is really simple when you look at it, but it's just effective shape and texture control. And so if you know how to do that well, then you can use this brush to basically control that aspect, right? So it's like, I don't know, it's a rock. It's still a shitty rock, but like now it has this texture applied as well. So because this texture isn't like overly specific, I can use it in a bunch of situations, So basically, you've got a very limited number of brushes that actually do something meaningfully different, right? Let's say you've got this soft brush, you can create gradients, right? With this texture brush, you can create textures. With this, it's an oil paint, right? So you can, let's say it's a sketcher and it's a blocker, right? It's and it's a little bit of texture, right? But you can see it's just a mix of all the things that we've kind of already talked about, right? This is a softer, and honestly, it doesn't have the same amount of texture, but it's pretty much got everything else that this oil paint has, right? It's got kind of an ability to sketch, and it's got an ability to sort of create gradients. I didn't really demonstrate that with this one, but I've sort of modified it as well by reducing the flow to be able to create gradients. This one is pretty much the same as well, right? And so the difference between these just comes down to brush tip shape. And honestly, that doesn't matter as much as you think, because you can always just, erase to make things sharper. You could use a soft eraser and you could erase to make things softer. You can switch to a blending brush and softening things out. So, in terms of shape control, it's the brush stamp at the end, like this. I don't know if you guys can see that, but this thing I'm waving around, and this shape here is just the stamp that this brush creates. And so in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really matter. So you can switch between, these and this, and well, this one's kind of niche, but you get the idea. Like it's all kind of within the same realm, right? So you can tell by my collection of brushes here that there's a very specific workflow that I have, because I've got all of these soft brushes, right, that can go transparent, that can kind of blend, right, but can also do hard lines, right, and have a little bit of texture to them, right? Like that's got a little bit of texture. This one's pure texture. This one's got a nice like oil paint texture. They're all within the same realm, right? Like I made this brush myself, and it's pretty much just a simplification of what I like in brushes. It's got these holes for a reason. It's because when I do these strokes, you can see it kind of makes it look like a paintbrush, because we've got these areas where the flow is reduced because of these holes in the brush stamp, and so it makes it kind of look like an actual paintbrush went across. It's got a little bit of that stroke variation, and it looks really nice. But if you're a comic artist, right, maybe you just need variations of these hard rounds, like more literally, because you just need this inker. You need like a color blocker, right? You can just, obviously I'm not spending time on these drawings, right? But you can, something to block out color, and then maybe you'll also take like a soft brush so that you can create some shading gradients, but you're not going too high effort there. You're not like painting that gradient out by hand, right? because that would just be your style as like a certain comic artist, right? So that's mostly what I want to get to you guys about is just understanding the functions of these brushes and the workflows that they actually support. And that way you can go in and try out brushes and you can actually understand what they're doing for you. And then you can choose ones that are actually going to support your workflow. Or you can try ones out and decide whether or not they're distracting you or they're hindering your workflow, or if they're actually, hitting that niche that you like, and just actually supporting you in your painting process. So yeah, I think I covered everything. Hopefully you were able to keep up and I was understandable. Hopefully this was useful. I'm going to create simplified versions of like these hard round brushes, right? So I'm gonna create and post these. I'm gonna create simplified versions of the brushes that I use in sort of like a hard round variation, so you can try out the different types of brushes in a very simple way. And then I'm also these brushes here that I use are already freely available on my website. So if you want to go grab those, head over there and try them out. Otherwise, Kyle Webster's comes free if you have the subscription to Adobe Photoshop, so you can go onto Adobe's website or just Google Kyle Webster brushes, and he's got lots, right? Like I said, I got this brush from him and I just modified it a bit. So yeah. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.